Hey guys, this is Luke Johnson from Noetic, the Humanities Teaching app, and we are back again with Holly Holt to give us a poetry lesson. She will be talking about Percy Bysshe Shelley's Mutability, or We Are as Clouds That Veil the Midnight Moon. And so as I will not steal any more of her thunder, it is time for her to do the talking.
All right. All right. So before I read the poem, I'm sure like the question to ask would be, what is mutability? The basic definition, I actually looked this up just to be sure I was actually looking at the right word, is liability or tendency to change. To understand the changes Shelley actually went through in his life, I did a bit of research on him through the pages provided at his biography on Wikipedia and poets.org. While I didn't quote anything from these pages specifically, they were actually used to benefit my analysis. I uncovered that he did, much like everybody who's ever been alive, right, experienced change throughout his life. After less than a year enrolled in Oxford, he was expelled for writing a pamphlet titled The Necessity of Atheism. And if he had denounced his ways, stated he was a Christian, he would have been able to stay in college. He didn't. His father would have nothing to do with him because he was, a Christian. And after being expelled, Shelley, who was 19, ended up eloping with a girl who was 3 years his junior. And she was actually given to dramatics and hated her life so much that she wrote to him saying that she wanted to commit suicide. He believed he was going to die young. Usually the romantics think that. He went along with it, and they traveled from England to Scotland. But in a strange turn of events, being bored of this, particular marriage, he fell in love with Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who would, of course, later on write Frankenstein, and threatened to end his life if she actually didn't return the love, right? And fortunately for me, as I'm analyzing one of his poems, she did return his love. And they would actually go on to have several kids together until he died shortly before his 30th birthday. He actually referred to her as a child of love and light. So, like you see with these two changes in Shelley's life and how they prompted him to become a man through expressing his beliefs and through being a romantic dramatic, expressing his love to get the girl. So he was really a genius when it comes to presenting a large picture in subtle, sweet language. With that said, let me read the poem I chose for today. So, mutability. We are as clouds that veil the midnight moon. How restlessly they speed and gleam and quiver, streaking the darkness radiantly, yet soon night closes round and they are lost forever. Or like forgotten lyres whose dissonant strings give various response to each varying blast, to whose frail frame no second motion brings one mood or modulation like the last. We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same. For it be joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may never be like his morrow. Naught may endure but mutability. From GreatSaver.com, on the page serving as a study guide for the summary of mutability, the writer sums up the first few verses. The point is that all things, natural or created, are always changing. Nothing is constant. And the question I had about the second verse was, why did he use a lyre? Of course, the lyre is a pretty old instrument, all the way back from Greek times. There's also a connection to mythology, as it's a symbol used to represent Apollo, who is seen as the god of many things, including music and poetry. So perhaps Shelley's use of the lyre was homage to Apollo. And then from the appoetryproject.com, on a page presented solely for the analysis of mutability, There are various readers who present comments addressing the elements of the poem. The one in particular that caught my attention was in regards to structure, stating, "This is a lyric poem, which is a poem that expresses the thoughts and feelings of the poet, and every other word rhymes." The reason that I found this interesting rests with the why behind this choice. Why did he decide to write this as a lyric poem? Why did he have the poem rhyme? Another question I had was, why did his wife choose to include the last two verses from this poem in her classic Frankenstein? I wouldn't say that the rhyme seems to work almost in a condescending way if he's mocking the sincerity of his truth. Instead, I think the message he's making is clear, that change is the only definite, and he chooses to rhyme because, well, A, that method of delivery was popular during the time. B, he was a fan of Wordsworth, so Shelley was doing a bit of copycatting. And C, every life, even the roughest lived, has a rhythm of its own, with lyrics that our souls sing. In answering these questions this way, we understand why Mary included the verses in her major work. Victor Frankenstein, in all that he would come to be by the novel's end, endured his own changes, and the rhythm from the creation of his creature to his own downfall was his own. In looking at the punctuation, the first verse and the final verse, they both use exclamation marks, which give this poem a sense of passion. Other punctuation use is perfect as well, with dashes used almost like breaths. He uses the statements of "we rest" and "we rise" almost as though defining them. And it's intriguing his word choice, poison and pollute. His tone, in a few cases, appears almost pessimistic, as if he believes that nothing good will come once life passes him by. I am also in awe about the contrast between the first two verses, going from the moon, the darkness, to the light of the lyre. Yet, despite whether he is being pessimistic or realistic, I think the latter, personally, my favorite lines of all are, "For be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free," which says to me, hey, no matter what pressures you're under, passing exams with flying colors, or meeting your deadlines at work so you won't be fired, life coming in or going out are both free. You are the one charged with making the most of it, through joy or sorrow, and you shouldn't stress too much because every bud blossoms and burns out, and that's okay. Change is good. Life is good. Don't stress yourself out over what you can't control. All in all, though this poem flows easily off the tongue, it's more complex than it appears, much like life, and that's really the bottom line why I love it.
That was fantastic, Holly.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all the research you did for it. Oh, wow. I'm just getting my mind around it here. You had two questions that you asked there at the end, right? The one was why he included, or why his wife included it in Frankenstein, right? And what was the first one?
The first one was really just, why he chose to use it as a lyric and as a rhyme instead of, like a free verse.
Do you feel like you adequately answered those questions for yourself? You gave me so much information that it took me, this would be one of those analyses that I would have to listen to 2 or 3 times to capture all the information that you gave me. I hate to be dense, but could you, if you did feel like you answered those questions adequately, could you recapitulate them? Because I thought they were really interesting questions. If not, that's okay. We can talk about them a little bit.
Well, actually, I think the fact we're talking about it a little bit actually will help because, like, if anyone has read Frankenstein, it's the way in which Mary Shelley actually writes about the landscape. She writes about the character's development, and the fact that Victor Frankenstein, he starts, in the story as he's a creator, and by the end, he's really, telling everyone don't be ambitious, so he changes completely, because of that. And the fact that, those last two verses, were included in that work, really ties, I think, into his character, because he had this, he wanted to create life. He wanted, in a way, to play God, because that's what he wanted to do, was to create something, and say that he did it. He's the one who could control life and death.
Yeah.
So, in this poem,
It's telling us how little control we have.
yes.
I see. I see. I wonder if there's some reason to, as for why he chose to write it lyrically, if that is, if that offers some sort of foil to the content. If the form is one thing, but the content of the poem is another thing. If it brings out the content of the poem that much more.
Yeah, I think really with this, I mean, it really has to do with how the Romantics tended to write.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like with Shelley, Keats, Byron, they all had this way of writing lyrically. I really think it was just the way that they wrote. But it would be cool though if there was more to it, which I was just like, I want there to be more to it, instead of just, like, wow, that's just the way they wrote.
I bet there's someone that contends that there is. I don't know who that person is, but fortunately with the Noetic app, maybe someone will come in one day and enlighten us on that matter.
True. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, I thought this was an excellent lesson, Holly. I really love how you've come into your own as far as how to orchestrate your thoughts and draw on research in advance and very succinctly diagnose these poems that people struggle with. So I want to thank you for your time doing that. It's a really great thing you just did for someone.
It's been awesome because I've been like researching this one because like last week we sort of skipped over, and then I was just like, okay, I'm going to really devote some extra time, this week. And that's what I did, was I really delved as deep as I possibly could, and really, just, like I said, I guess sunk my teeth into this. And I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll just keep doing what you're doing. Do you want to say anything in closing?
No, but thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much, Holly.
You're welcome.